Welcome to In Light of the Gospel, episode 54. Happy New Year to everybody. I appreciate the whole last year, all the support and the likes and the sharing and all that kind of stuff. It's a real joy and excitement for me to be a part of something like this. It's been a blessing to me for sure. Today I'm speaking with Henry Schmitt. Him and his wife Tina have recently quit his job and he's going full-time into counseling ministry. Years ago, they realized that they both had a love and a care for people that are hurting. And before you know it, the door is wide open and people are lining up to come and see them. They've taken some training. They've learned how to examine people's lives, to consider where their troubles may have begun, but ultimately trying to point people to the Lord Jesus and the saving power of the gospel. And so they've got a long list of people waiting to see them, whether it's hurting marriages or depressed, suicidal people. They've dealt with so many different things, even just in the last number of years. And now, starting January 1st, going full-time into a ministry that doesn't guarantee a payment. You know, he's doing this for free. He's willing to help people however they want. They can pay if they want. They cannot pay if they want. So it's he's clearly doing it from the heart, and he really wants to see people's lives change and turn around. And I think they've been quite effective and had a lot of fruit in their ministry already. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate any support you can give to this channel, but I think more importantly, if you can give any support to Henry and Tina Schmitt as they move into this ministry full-time. It's a pretty big decision on their part, and I hope that this will contribute in some way to giving that a lasting, fruitful abundance to their ministry. Thanks for tuning in. So you got about a week left of work, and then jumping full-time into ministry.
Yeah.
Counseling people.
Yeah. There's only a few days left, and I guess that's why I feel like the time is just getting away from us, because I'm thinking, you know what, we got lots of time. Like when we first, it came to the point where we needed to go full-time. But anyways, yeah, time is getting away from us, and we only have a week left, and so in January that's when it
that's you're off work. I know last time you mentioned to me that you could potentially still work a day or two here and there for the stubbies, right?
Yeah, for stubbies, and I have talked with them, so they are very gracious and
that's
actually
cool.
giving me some free like some time that I'll be able to come and work. Because I'll have to. We're not quite there.
Don't have quite enough funds
Not
ready
nearly,
for that.
Not nearly. But
Well, the thing is, you guys said you had something like often a year or over a year worth of people waiting to come and talk to you guys, right? And you're just doing in the evenings, trying to make time for people.
Yeah. So we've done it. So for the last 5 years, the way we started doing that, obviously a full-time job, right? So so we would book the evenings, and so throughout the week.
Yeah.
And so it started, the list started growing more and more, but it was a year and a half that we had a waiting list already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just kept on increasing, so we couldn't keep up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you guys just started counseling almost by mistake, eh? Where
in a way
you just liked helping people, and you couldn't help but kind of try to give people some counsel.
Yeah, so in a way it kind of was like that, because I never imagined that we would actually go into counseling. And I guess I never saw myself to be able to do that, never. But so as we got together with couples and just kind of hanging out and stuff, and some of them very newly married, and they started sharing about their struggles, and so we
they
thought
just naturally opened up to you guys, eh?
So we thought maybe we could help them, in which just our own experience, right? Just how we had done things, and we've been married for a while, and so there were some deeper issues that I was that we were heartbroken over, and we were like, that there's got to be something that you can do, because
like people came to you with issues that were so deep where you're like, I have no idea, how do you handle this? Yeah,
more or less, that there were issues that were a lot deeper, and we didn't have the answers for.
Yeah.
So we started searching seeking out some counsel from around us, and just to, hey, how would we help people like this, or what would we do here?
What do you find were like some of the bigger issues that you were just like, this is beyond me? Is it like deep addictions and pornography or drugs or something even worse than that? Or
I mean, it's a lot of that. A lot of that. It was a lot of that, and but also just even the minor things, like just fighting all the time and just couldn't agree with anything or for anything, and then almost in a way that was almost harder, because now you couldn't really say, well,
this needs to stop.
Let's look at it, and let's have a new mind and a fresh, a new mindset on these things. But some of the bickering and fighting, and we just can't get along, and we don't know each other, and a lot of those things. And that's kind of where it started.
And then as a couple yourself, like I think of our marriage, even like we've had plenty of difficult times, and we've had a hard time sometimes getting along, and we've had our squabbles and stuff, but somehow we've kind of worked it out, and where it's just getting better and better, and we're getting along well. But sometimes it's hard to know, well, what did we do, or how do you do this? I don't know. We just figured it out, right?
Yeah, we learned to grow together, and we find each other's weakness and strengths, but a lot of that is something that I think it comes with experience, right? Like obviously, like you gotta you come from different homes. Your wife grows up in a home, and you grow up in a different home, and for many of them, actually, the one side has a very religious home growing up, going to church all the time, being very strict, and the other side didn't care. Like they did whatever, didn't have to go to church.
Now you're trying to bring those two together, and it's such a contrast.
And that can lead to a lot of difficulties. And so when they don't know how to work those things out, they have so much struggle in their own relationship that they actually end up going to stuff that to spiritual issues.
Okay.
So they end up doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and so then that increases, and that just brings it all even worse, right?
Yeah.
So it just comes to a big a mess.
Yeah. There's a book by Timothy Keller called The Meaning of Marriage. I don't know if you've ever seen it or read it, but in there he gives an example of him and his wife. Like they had two completely different views of what love and respect looked like. He said growing up, his dad was a hard-working man. I feel like he was maybe, I might get this wrong, but I think he worked in the mines or something. So he worked hard, and he came home tired and exhausted. And the way his wife, this Timothy Keller's mom, showed respect and honor to her husband was by, as soon as he got home, she told him, go sit down, I'll get you something. She never let him lift a finger, right? Like he came in, sat down, and she served him hand and foot, and just really respected the work that he had put in, and was really careful to make sure that he didn't have to do any more work than he had already done. And then her parents, on the other hand, her mom had always had some sick conditions. She was always having some medical problems. And so the way that her dad showed love and honor towards his wife was by pitching in around the house, always taking care of things and working here, working there, trying to help out around the house, because she just couldn't keep up with it all. She had a lot of health conditions. And then all of a sudden they get married, and he's a minister, full-time minister. So he goes out to work, and he's got the office all day, and he works, and he comes home, and he's tired and exhausted, and he's thinking, if she really loved me, if she really respected me, what would she do? Well, she would serve me. And now they had their first baby, and he said he remembers it so clearly that all of a sudden he's holding the baby. He's like, ooh. And he's like, Kathy, the baby stinks or whatever. And then she's like, well, why don't you do it? And he said he felt completely disrespected. What do you mean I do it? I was working all day.
Yeah.
And this is not something that I do, right? And it was just that mindset where in her mind, she's like, if you're not willing to change the baby, you must not care for me the way my dad cared for my mom. And so now they're both arguing in their minds with things that they don't even fully understand, right?
Yeah.
And then that could build and build and build, where it
definitely does. That's
becomes
amazing.
A big marriage problem now.
Yeah. And that's true. From something that you would find it would be minor or something small, it actually becomes, oh wow, now I really feel disrespected.
Because it's not really just about the baby changing diapers.
It's not even about that.
No, it's about deep respect issues. You know?
And I got to say that's a big part of it, because we deal with a lot of the Mennonites, right? So that's a big part of it, because the misunderstanding there. the misunderstanding of, I need to be respected. The man needs respect, or and the wife doesn't feel love.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, I think the misunderstanding is there that we don't realize that the respect, to show respect, goes both ways, right? And so that by us not, let's say by the man not, or feeling like she's not respecting him and accusing her of it or whatever, the man isn't respecting her either,
right,
by even just by having that mindset.
Yeah.
But
as soon as you're expecting something from her, now you're no longer cherishing her and caring
exactly
for her.
and the way we're to care for them is to they're the weak of wrestle, right? So that we are to love them in such a way. And so that has been a big issue. And for the big part, I would say there are those that are not really, wouldn't really say that they have huge problems, but there are those that have been married for 10, 17 years, but they're just like, what, I feel like our relationship it's just not where it should be.
Okay.
And it's not like that they have some of them, it's not like that they have huge fights all the time, but they're like, I don't have any joy. Or
that's often where adultery and divorce and stuff comes from, right? Where it's just like, this isn't giving me meaning anymore.
Yeah, I'm not fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is they go to stuff that they shouldn't be going to, like, pornography, or, they do other things that to try to fill themselves, because we are designed in such a way deep within that we are to feel, that we, to feel that fulfillment in a way. God has placed it within the heart of man, right? And relationship is, God is all about relationship.
Yeah.
And so he designed us for relationship. If it's a marriage, or if it's single people, whatever it is, relationship with one another, with others. So he has designed us that way. And then, he calls some to be single, and that's fine. But he calls others to be married, but he wants them to have a fulfilled relationship.
Yeah, I was just going to say, marriage shouldn't be drab and boring. It should somehow continue to build and be interesting and exciting, right? So.
Yeah.
What do you remember when you first started realizing that, hey, this is actually doing something? Do you remember, like, maybe a couple or something like that where it's like, hey, they're actually working it out. They're no longer going to...
Yeah, there were there was a couple, and at this time they didn't understand each other, struggled a lot, and we thought, well, we hadn't gotten to any training at that point, nothing, and so we never really came together with this couple. They just, at church, they just had just heard that we were just getting together with people, and I had no idea what they were up to, but anyways, they asked us if they could come over. It's just sure they could come over, and so she had shared with Tina about her struggles in the marriage, and I think they expected us to, because that she shared her side of things, that expected us to kind of question him on what he was up to, but
usually the one that instigates the counseling thinks that they got the upper hand somehow.
Yeah, so they came over, and I was completely clueless. I was like, I don't know. She's expecting something, right? So, and I don't know what to do. So at that point, we didn't address him on anything, because obviously he hadn't said anything to us, and so we just questioned her, really. So and that was not us. Like, it was just by God's design, God's leading. We prayed that God would give us, and so I had no idea we would go that direction. I didn't know what to do. I thought, well, I don't know. I don't want to ask him questions that she's been
maybe he's
asking.
Not ready yet.
Yeah. So and they didn't come for that purpose. They came just to kind of hang out. But she had already kind of talked to Tina, and that's we didn't want to mess with that. So anyways, as they came, and we just questioned her on how she was doing, and so he wasn't pressured at all, and so in that way they started talking, and we're like, oh, okay, so there's a way that you can do that. You don't have to,
don't have to squeeze somebody into it, eh?
No. So I guess that would be, and that's got to be about 12 years ago.
Okay.
About that. 11, 12 years ago.
And that wasn't even necessarily like an official counseling session.
No. Actually, at that point, no, it wasn't. No. And that's kind of where Tina and I felt, we feel that's where God is kind of calling us, because we need more information. We need to know, and just by feeling what that did, just to ask some questions, um, was probably the first time where we really felt, what, I think we need to look into it a little bit more.
I see. I find that most people, once you get to know a group of people, especially, and you start letting yourself into that group, and they maybe open up to you a bit,
Yeah.
there's a lot deeper issues than you would ever imagine.
Yeah.
In most cases, people either just criticize them and just
Yeah.
I can't believe they're like that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're struggling with something deep themselves.
Yeah.
But to look at it and say, hey, look, I think I actually have something that I can offer you. I think there's a way out of this. Is way more hopeful than just gossiping or speaking ill of someone.
For sure. And see, I used to not know for sure if I wanted to ask too many questions, because I thought that's what I was afraid of. Things are going to come out, but then I'm going to feel responsible or kind of feel like I need to have some answers. But there came a point where Tina and I, we said, you know what, we need to be able to handle those things. So, but now now I get excited to ask questions. Now
you want to kind of let's bring it all on the table. Let's hear it all, right?
I get excited, and especially if people share their deeper issues, I'm more excited.
Not because you want to hear a bunch of evil things,
no,
but you know that they're being liberated as they share it. Eh?
Not at all, because and this is the heart of Jesus. And everywhere in the Gospels that when we read of what Jesus came for and who he ministered to, it was always to the broken. It was to those that were hurting, and to those that were kind of the outcast, like the pushed away, and the story that really touched me in Mark chapter 2, I think it is, where Jesus is in the house. It says that he's in the place where people hear about that he's there.
Yeah.
So immediately it says that people came and they just filled that place. Obviously, immediately they were filled, and he preached the word to them, and so people were hungry to hear. And obviously, they had issues as well, right? Because they were looking for answers. And so there's this man that there's four men that are carrying this paralytic to him. They're trying to bring him to Jesus.
Yeah.
But this man that can't walk, like he can't even get there. Much less, when they get there, it's full. Yeah. Like to the door, it's like completely
can't
packed.
Get in for the press.
Yeah, and so really these the four men there, they're carrying him up to the roof, and they let him down.
They start opening up the roof panels, right?
Yeah,
like just
and they
disassembling.
Bring him down, and he had no way of getting to Jesus, but they made a way.
Yeah,
and so we look at that as when people struggle, we have no way of healing them. We have no way of doing anything for them. But the exciting part is there is someone that does. And Amen. He came for that. He came to heal the brokenhearted. He came to set the captives free. And he came for the blind and for those that were oppressed. Yeah. Like there are all those things.
So in that story, you would feel like you're the four friends. Just trying to get these people to come to Jesus.
Yeah, and
that's
so
where the healing is.
And that's where we see ourselves as we are just the ones that help, more or less, carry them to the one that can heal them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. I know, Matt, last time you mentioned to me too that you're not just doing marriage counseling. You've been talking to individuals too if they've got some deep struggles or something. Yeah. If they're struggling with maybe depression or anxiety, or how does that work? Yeah.
So a lot of it is depression, especially in today's day. Depression, anxiety is huge, and so we deal with a lot of single people as well, and not just marriage, but yeah, depression can really be coming from a lot of different sources.
Yeah,
and the biggest thing would be I would say, from what we've seen, is a lot of issues that have happened, emotional issues,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of unhealing that haven't been healed. So they haven't been able to come to a point where they've been able to heal from those. And so that's again where we're looking at what's the root cause of it, because there is a 5% of the huge where depression can be a chemical imbalance,
Yeah.
but it's a small percentage.
More often than not, it's some hurt, some
Yeah. And usually depression comes from some hurt and from pain, and then anger gets mixed in with that, and frustration because
Mhm.
you don't know what to do, and you can't grab a handle on it. When you can't grab a handle on it, you get anxious because you don't know what's happening. And so when we hear those things, then we'll try to identify what the issues are.
Mhm.
So when we go and identify what the issues are, and even help that person see it for themselves, and when they see it, they're able to grab a hold of it. And for many of them, they didn't know, but they have actually not really fully forgiven. Like, let's say if there are things that happened in the past, or
some traumatic event,
somewhere
or they were abused in some way.
Yeah. Either that, or it can be something that happened to them, or even what didn't happen to them, what was withheld, like emotional. Like we all have this. God designed us in such a way that we have this need of to be cared for, and to be loved. And let's say a child, or is growing up in a home, or just never feeling loved or not cared for. Those are also things that can come into a person's life later on.
They kind of start to identify that person, like, this is who I am. I'm unloved. I'm uncared for. I'm nobody really. Yeah. I'm not worthy of that kind of care and attention.
Mm-hmm. Right? And a lot of that's what that is, because when the depression is, I don't feel worthy of anything, which we are not worthy in our own ourselves, but really they come to the point where they identify themselves as that's who I am. Uh-huh. Like that's who I am. Yeah. So they don't feel that.
And then that's where hopefully you can identify it and then bring them to the gospel, right? Because
identify
the gospel, I mean, you are loved, you are cared for, you are accepted, you are worthy. That all happens at the cross, right?
Yeah, and so that's where we take that, and we're like, you know what, there's someone that totally understands you, and someone that always loved you, and then we actually take the situation, and we have them bring it to Christ, and we have them pray through it, and we help them with that. Mm-hmm. And then and bring all of those issues, and it's amazing. And you asked earlier about and some stories where we saw this first after we started doing this, we felt like we don't know what we were doing. Right. Like, really, I have no idea.
We're willing to help, but we don't know what to do.
Yeah, but we just made that clear. You know what? We're not counselors, but we are here to give counsel as best as we can. And so that's just where it was, right? And so we saw the Lord at work. We saw a person. Let's say the first person that came was very shortly after we went for training, and we didn't feel that ready. Like you never feel ready, right? And so we just wanted to send them off again, like we had been doing, to just someone else. And this person said no. Actually said no. I would like to come to you guys if you could help me. Yeah. I'm like, I mean, you can come, and we can talk about it and see. So, anyways, that after we had many meetings, and we just allowed the Lord to do the work, and so there we saw transformation that I was really just and I had never seen before. Really, and it wasn't anything that we did, but I saw a person from one thing, and one she was in this stage, and then going to people that had hurt her and actually mistreated her, and saw this firsthand, and actually invited us to come with her. Like, I was like, that's amazing. Like, I don't know what we were going to do, but anyways, she wanted to get everything on the table and make it right, and so really this person was mistreated and wasn't treated right, but she owned up 100% on
She just took responsibility for her own part.
On what she had, how she had responded. But what happened was just amazing, and I think that's where we really saw, you know what, this is what
this could be fruitful, eh?
Yeah. And even at that point, we didn't see ourselves as going into counseling. At first, after we came back from training, it was more or less just, you know what, we're just gonna get together. If we get together with people and they have some questions that
at
we
least
can maybe
then you
answer.
have some answers, but not that you thought we're going to go into counseling, eh?
No, at that point, it wasn't really that yet. No, it was just like, you know, if at least hopefully we can give some answers to people. And so, and it just one led to another, one person, and we never advertised, never did we talk about it. And the reason for that was that we wanted to be sure this was of God, not our doing. And so we never talked about it, and so that all just happened with people that came. They went and talked to somebody else, like, oh hey, you know, I know you're struggling here, so maybe you can go and call them and talk to them. So every time one person was done, 2 others called. It seemed like almost every time that happened.
Yeah. And you guys kind of made a commitment from very early on that you would never be charging, eh? Like, what's the logic behind that? Because I know there's two ways of thinking about that. On one hand, it's like, if you don't charge, you're going to get filled up. People are going to come from far and wide, and they're not going to even appreciate it. They're just going to come and go and whatever. They don't care. They don't charge anything anyway. Meanwhile, you're spending hours and hours and hours, not only in counseling, but praying for them and thinking about it, setting up meetings, putting aside time from your children, and you know, all that stuff builds up. And the other side is like, no, if you're coming to me, you're going to pay for my time because I want to make sure that you feel like you're actually spending valuable, hard-earned money to come and get some help, right? So what was the logic behind saying we're never going to charge?
Well, when we first started off, it was more or less that, you know, we didn't want people to feel obligated to give anything. We just, and at the time, we didn't quite know where it was going to go. But anyways, after a while, so caring for the heart ministries, they operate that way. Okay. But even at the time, we could have even for ourselves, we didn't have we hadn't opened an office yet or nothing. So we could have still done whatever we felt right to do. But we didn't feel that we could charge. And even to this day, we have had people that weren't able to, and so we just asked them not to feel obligated, because as soon as they feel that pressure, we feel that they're not going to be completely relaxed and just, you know, I don't want to think about, okay, after this session I got to pay all this money, and counseling is extremely expensive. So if you go and set up a counseling session somewhere, you pay minimum, I think, $100 an hour. So it's extremely expensive. And we've had those that have had 1 or 2 sessions somewhere with paying that, and they said, you know what, I don't feel anything got resolved because I couldn't afford it anymore. It was just too much. And as soon as they feel that pressure, like, let's say, okay, if this session isn't going to help me, like, I'm okay, it's got to go somewhere quick. So I don't know if that makes sense, but in a way, we want people to relax, and we take the time as much as we need. So it's not like, okay, we're trying to get more time out of them, not at all. But this way, they know we're not doing it to gain anything, and so we really feel that God has led us in that way, that we just keep it open, and to whatever they feel to give and to donate, or however that is.
I know I've had this struggle for years, because I know growing up Old Colony, preachers just don't get paid. That's just how it goes. They work full-time jobs, and they go and work, they counsel, they preach, they do all that stuff on the side, and it's because God has called you to do it, and you're not supposed to do it for the money. And I agree with that. So I can't imagine Jesus going, you know, being asked to heal somebody and say, I will, but it's going to cost you. You know, you're going to have to pay me $100 an hour or something to heal you. Like, that doesn't happen.
No.
And same with the Apostle Paul, same with the rest of the apostles. They went out and they did what they were going to do. Like, they were going to be preaching the gospel regardless if they ever got paid. But then you also see Paul making some really good arguments for saying, it's not right that you would muzzle the ox while he treads out the grain.
Yeah.
While he's working full-time in ministry, he's preaching the gospel, he's teaching, he's counseling.
Yeah.
And shouldn't he be eating while he's doing that? And he says at one point, he refused money from several churches, but at one point he says, we've sown unto you spiritual things.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really a big deal if we reap some of your carnal things?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't that just make sense? And so for me, I always feel like in an ideal world, it would be like, if I've offered you something that has really helped you spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
like you are now better for the conversation we had. You walk
Mm-hmm.
away feeling like, man, I'm so liberated. I'm so freed up. I'm so glad that I went and talked to him.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it make sense then to say, you know what? Here's a gift card. Here's some money. Go take your wife out. Here's some, pay your bills, whatever. Like, it would only be logic. It makes sense. Or if some preacher has really blessed you and your life has been altered by his ministry, wouldn't it make sense for you to say, hey, look, go do more of that.
Yeah.
Here's some money so you can do more of that, right?
Yeah.
And so I would hope that people who are blessed by your ministry and whose lives have been changed, that they would try to find some way to pay back and say, hey, look, I'm not trying to pay you for your work because I know you didn't do it for the money, but I really appreciate what you've done, and here's a gift, here's some help, right? Like, that's how it should roll, right?
Yeah, and it shows, and for many too, they I've even had people in our session that would just say, I feel God wants me to give, and I know I'm not really connected to a church right now, and I just and we won't pressure them, but at the same time to say the giving is not for us. It's whatever the Lord lays on your heart is more or less, God wants to further His kingdom, and that could be through different things. Some people feel led to give in this way or in that way, but we always ask people to follow that, pray about it, and then follow that, because that's where the rewards will be. The rewards will always be where you would be obedient to what God has called you to do.
Yeah.
And so we feel completely at ease and confident with that, when it's not, we don't want anybody ever to feel any pressure.
Right.
And so, like you said, if they feel that this has been meaningful, or if it's been life-changing, or however
and
that
you
is.
have the means to be able to help you, then that would be great, right?
Yeah.
You are getting a little bit of help from the church.
Yeah, they are doing a little bit, and we are very grateful for anybody that and we have been reaching out for sponsorship, which is not very comfortable.
It's uncomfortable, yeah.
Like, that's probably one of my toughest times this year about this whole ministry, has been that. But it's part of our journey that we are supposed to be on now. And
you are quitting your full-time job.
Quitting my job, so really we're I believe we should have done this a couple of years ago for sure, but you know what, now is the time to do it. So yeah,
that's quite a step to take for sure.
Yeah, and so that's where it's at, and so we're just praying that God would put it together as He has planned it,
and that there'd be a bunch of fruit, that more and more families would be liberated and freed up, individuals. Yeah,
and the way the way we look at it too. So if we can walk alongside a marriage, or a single person, or whatever it is, we've seen this even in the church. It can benefit the whole church, because as people change, and as their relationship grows and gets stronger, and they begin to enjoy each other, they are looking to see where the Lord would have them be, and where would the Lord have me to serve. And so
all of a sudden they get involved.
And we've seen actually many, and that's what has been so exciting to us. Like, we see people getting involved, and they're actually wanting to. They get excited, and it just seems like it goes beyond just the marriage. It goes beyond just that couple. It's all of a sudden, when they get to that point, they have more joy. They be more fulfilled, because that's what God had planned for them. There were these blocks that they didn't know what to do with, and you know what? Once those blocks and that wall is being torn down, and all of a sudden they see things that they hadn't seen before. And so when they do that, they can go far. and we've seen many things, many
cool.
times that happens.
So it's not. It's like they come to you in the red in their books, the money books, showing that they have no money, they're way in debt, and your goal is not just to bring them up to zero and
No.
leave them there. It's to start to get them to be productive citizens.
Oh,
and start helping people where they're not just a drain. It reminds me of, say, Colossians chapter 3 it is, where Paul says, let him that stole steal no more, but rather laboring with his hands that he may have to give.
Exactly.
And so here's a guy that stole. The goal isn't, let's get him to stop stealing.
Let's just get him to stop. Yeah.
No, the goal is, let's get him to stop stealing and to start working and to start giving. And so the same way, if you can get a couple coming in that's broken and hurting and they don't know which way to go, and then you get them to the point where, hey, we can actually work together now. Hey, that's not enough. Now that you're working together, you can go help someone else, right?
And it's not even something that we say to them. It's not even something that we try to get them to do. It's something that comes because it's within the heart of him already that God has placed there.
Nice.
And so when they get to the point where they, and and there are those that have had a lot of growing. They've been growing up in a traditional way, and they just do things the way they were taught and the way their parents did it and the way they
don't even think about it. They just do naturally,
and they do the best they can. They're doing their very best. They're trying hard, and so we always tell them. Some will say, you know what, I just want this relationship to be back where it used to be. And most of the time I'll look, once I hear the story, I look at them and I'm like, not only can you have what you used to have, but you can actually be where you've never been before.
Amen.
So that's the exciting part, because if it's never been modeled, it can be hard for a person to know where can I actually be in my relationship if it's never been modeled.
What steps do I take? Yeah.
And so that's what's so exciting, because when they've never had, never seen it, and that's not to blame anybody. It's not to blame your parents, not to blame your grandparents, because that's just how they did things. So it's not to blame anybody.
In fact, sometimes if your parent was to blame for your condition, you might kind of hate them.
Yeah.
And once you see this, you'll actually kind of have pity on them.
You actually have compassion. And so we've seen so often where there has been a lot of blame and a lot of even hatred, how they've been hurt and damaged. But once they see it, they have such a compassion towards their parents or someone else that they felt that had maybe been part of their hurt. All of a sudden, when they say, I feel like just calling this person. I feel like, I want to go there and just give them a hug, or I just want to talk to them. So when you hear that, that's when this person has truly been able to see it
now
clearly.
They're free, right?
Yeah. So then you can start healing. When you start hearing things like that, healing is beginning to take place.
And what's your typical procedure when somebody comes to see you? You sign them up for whenever and when they finally get to you, their first session. What do they expect then? Is it?
Well, we lay it all out for them. We'll make sure they know exactly what they're in for.
Is it like a few months or a couple weeks?
No, actually, the way we are doing it is it's a full week at a time.
Okay.
So we will the beginning process is the way we are now. So we're going full time under the Caring for the Heart umbrella, and so we can use their whole program. And the program is the TJTA chart and the questionnaire, and they got to fill out some paperwork, which before they show up, if they fill that out, we will have the information, and so that saves us probably about 10 hours worth of counseling, which is
they're already filling you in on what's going on.
Yeah, so we already get the information, and so I can start studying that, and so when they come, we will lay out the week, what that week looks like from day one to the end of the
every
week.
day for the week.
Every day, it is 4 days that we take, and 1 day is for for complete, just to get prepared for it, because
Okay.
we get their paperwork and all that. So I'll just take one day, and then I'll take the Monday, and then Tuesday we start seeing them.
Okay.
And
So
then we'll walk
that's
them
pretty
through that.
intensive. Like every day looking at
It is
these problems
intensive. And then we deal with everything. We start just gathering information. So really gathering all of information, because that's important to know where they're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to know of like as much as we can about that person.
Yeah.
And so then we go into a day to day.
One problem that people often do have with counseling, especially with someone just down the road or a preacher or something like that, is all of a sudden the information that they share gets out.
Yeah.
It's
And
pretty devastating. Right?
we make that very clear. Whatever comes and whoever comes and whatever is being said is never being shared. And even as far as who's coming, we'll never share that with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we always tell them, you know what, that's up to you. If you want to want people to know, that's up to you. That's not up to us.
Yeah.
And so as far as that goes, we've never shared who was coming, but we have had many people that will actually be sharing testimonies out in the open and
They'll
telling them.
Say we went to go see
Yeah.
Mary and Tina.
And so that's fine, because they did that.
Sure.
But as far as any personal information, they can be assured that that's where it stays.
Nice.
Yeah. And the only ones that will know is us and God.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And what we will do sometimes is we'll ask them if we can share the story, but not
Right.
whose story. And so we have permission that way. And then we can just say, yeah, this person has this testimony. It was this, but is now this,
Mm-hmm.
because of how the Lord has transformed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the issues that you guys end up dealing with are relationship issues and personal mental health issues. Have you guys dealt with anything like that feels deeper than that, more spiritual, like demonic type of presence?
Yeah, there are those as well, and it can be a bit more challenging. You got to.
I'm sure it could be a little intimidating at first.
Yeah, you got to spend a little bit extra time on that, but at the same time, we are dealing with it the same way, like gathering all the information. And the only time that it seems very difficult is if a person is closed up and they won't share. Obviously, that's
how
hard.
do you gain any ground then?
That's difficult, and if they're open and willing to share and just completely lay it all out, because if a person holds back and they're not honest with everything, they won't really get free.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're honest with everything and open about it, they can get free from just about anything. And yes, there are those that need some medical attention, and so we will then direct them, obviously, to their doctors and stuff, so that they can.
Nice.
But for the most part, we haven't. That's only been a few, but for the most part, it's actually things that you wouldn't realize that what can happen to you, like just the smaller things, and the like you said before, there's something that starts in a relationship, and it just builds and builds and builds, and you don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you can go back and attack that, and just what caused this issue, and then just go and get to those points, and then all of a sudden this surface, like I call it surface, like depression is huge, and in a person that's into alcohol, it's huge. But when you get rid of that, when you deal with that, just all of a sudden it disappears. It goes away, and so a person is able to think and to function differently than what they had before.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so depression come from a lot of different things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it kind of builds upon itself too, right? Like let's say someone gets depressed when they have financial struggles.
Yeah.
And they have a deep financial struggle, but that leads them to getting physically sick. And their physical sickness leads them to not being able to work as much as they should be able to. And they're not motivated at work. and now they have more financial struggles, and so that's like this vicious cycle, right?
It's like a cycle that keeps on going and going, and it's almost like I don't see an end of it. And when the person sees that, this has been ongoing for a long time, and all they see is a cycle, and like it's just been constantly the same thing.
No
what, I
hope.
had it here, and I have it here. And
I think depression is often hopelessness, right?
and that's where you find that saying, because they don't see the hope that there is actually a light.
There's no way out.
And some are deeper than others. Some is just depression on a daily basis. They just feel depressed, and it's not like that they don't see hope. It's just that everything depresses them. So the heart of God is that they come free from that, and that's what's amazing, because knowing that is where we have so much hope, because it's not His heart for us to go on day to day to day to day. There are times where we will feel depressed, but then it shows us something. There's something not right, so we seek that out. We come to Him, and we ask Him to reveal those things to us. And sometimes He shows us clearly. Other times it's been ongoing for a long time, and now you're getting hopeless, because if it's been ongoing for so long, now you're like, okay, I have no idea, and it gets foggy, and it just becomes one of those like I don't know, I can't even hear God anymore. There are a lot of those things that come into play, right? And so to sit down with a person, one person explained it this way to me, because I went through a deep fog, and if I would explain it right, I had sunk into depression as well, because of circumstances and other things. Anyways, so I saw some counsel from other people, and I came to one person, and he was counseling me and through this, and I explained my situation, and then he smiled, and he says, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're where you are." And I was not sure what he was talking about.
I'm struggling here, man.
And I was in a way, I was almost like, does he not quite understand where I'm at? But he understood. He knew exactly where I was at, and so he explained it this way. He's like, when you are in a thick fog, and it's just, you can't see the next step in front of you. Like, I've been in fogs, but anyways, you can't see anything. But let's just imagine that there's a clear road, somebody else is beside you, or you're walking and you're in the fog, and this guy's in the sunshine, and he sees the path clearly, and he just says, "Trust me, follow me, just we'll go together." So I have to trust that he sees something that I don't. And he actually said that I see something that you don't. And this was just before we got into counseling.
Okay.
And so, but he saw potential there. I didn't. And because of the struggle, and I believe I'm very thankful for the struggle now, because the Lord has, through that, through that experience, has shown me what He can do. And now I don't just feel for people that are depressed. I'm actually like, you know what, I've been there. I know what it's like. And I also know that you can come out. I'm not just saying that.
Because it feels like you can't, right?
Yeah, because I felt like I don't think this is going to change. I think it's going, like, it was for 2 years that I felt that way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Do you mind sharing a bit with what brought that on?
Yeah, there was circumstances, and things that happened in our lives, and there were a lot of things, even with church family, and that we had a hard time with.
Oh, yes, I remember you did share a bit of that with me.
And so it was hard to understand what God was doing, but see, he allowed some of those things, some of those uncertainties, and there was a lot of uncertainty. The thing is, I think I had a goal in mind, and I was excited, and I was ambitious, and it was at the time where we were seeking to know how to maybe help people, and it was actually at that time, and I thought we were following God's direction and following what He had for us, and all of a sudden things came crashing down, and I couldn't understand what was going on. I just didn't know what was happening, and I was even questioning, okay, so maybe was this just our own doing? Was it just that I was excited for myself? Yep. I don't want that. And so I started doubting, and so that whole thing, just in my mind, I slipped, and I didn't keep my mind sharp, and I just allowed those things to just dwell within me. And
there's plenty of blame to go around. You could say it was this person's fault or that person's fault, and maybe they did wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you are the one that takes responsibility for your own mind and your own well-being, right?
Absolutely, because I was responsible for where it would take me, and the Lord was at work. So even though at that point we were looking to see how we could get into to help others, and so he was taking us through some challenging times. And at that time, Tina's dad passed away, and so it was also challenging there. And so we were just seeking to know where he was taking us. And so it just seemed like from one to the next, it didn't seem like anything was helping and anything was getting better. And so we ended up I ended up struggling quite a bit more than what Tina did. So I sunk into that depression. And so just looking at the psalmist, like even Psalm David, he had times like that. And I think and he's the man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
And also he experienced pits in his life, and I remember reading where he said that he was in a pit, and I'm like, I feel like I can almost, I'm not saying I'm there where he is, but I was like, I think I can relate to something like that, because I feel like I'm in the pit. And that was the first time I felt like, yeah, you know what, I can kind of see what I feel like I'm in the pit and I'm trying to get out.
Yeah, and you can definitely see that that's mostly a stress or trauma induced, right? Where it's like, I can't function anymore. I don't know what to live for. I have nothing to get up for in the morning. I don't know where to go with this problem, right? So it's sometimes, like you said, it can be health related, and maybe you could change your diet some, you could change the way that you live some. Yeah. But ultimately, it's getting some hope again, right?
It's getting some hope and just grabbing hold of something. I think we all want that. We all need that. We need to know.
What was it that finally brought you out of that funk? Was it recognizing what had caused it, or was it more seeing the hope and the freedom that you have in Christ?
It was there. The freedom in Christ was there, and I knew that through the whole time, and that made it even more tougher.
Because you knew the gospel, you knew the hope of eternal life and all that.
Yeah, I knew all that, and so I guess the toughest part was that. But I did some journaling, and I'm not the person to do that. Like, I would not do that. But I wrote some stuff down.
Yep.
Just some stuff. And at the time, your prayers feel so empty, right? They feel like, I don't know, is God even hearing me? Like, you're starting to doubt. So I'm praying, and so I don't remember what I'm praying. But I remember especially the one night that I was just extremely hard. And I'm like, God, this has been a while now, and I don't know what to do and where to turn. And so I just, I had prayed a prayer. I had read a psalm, for one thing, and I seen the experience that David had, and I'm like, he came out of it, and he praised the Lord for it, and he even praised him for the pits and the valleys, and so I just read that. I'm like, God, right now I can't feel you. I don't, I can't. I don't feel like I hear you.
Yep.
But I was just pouring out what I was feeling, and I was like, God, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling like I'm in a horrible pit, and I'm trying to get out, and I don't know how. And for the first time, what I jotted down was, Lord, I'm not going to, complain about, I don't know what you're doing anymore. But at that point, I prayed, Lord, whatever it is, can you use this for good? Can you use this for your glory? Because it says, in all things will work out for the glory of God, And so I for the first time, I just asked him to take that and to use it for what he wanted to use it for, and even if I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the beginning of my turning point. And I remember I could start hearing him when I was reading the Bible. I could in a way, it spoke not didn't hear a voice, but it
for
just
sure.
spoke to my heart. Like I could finally get excited about some things that I was reading, and that's, I feel like that was a turning point, and it wasn't completely. I needed others. I needed other people as well.
Yeah.
And so it was actually during that process that we had already booked for our training.
Is that when they called you up front and did the counseling session in front of the others?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they called us for. I mean, I had already booked for training. I was ready to just to drop it, and Tina just said, what do we have to lose? Why don't we just go? And so it was during that process I just said, whatever you want to do. And we went, and not knowing that, as we were there for the third day, I think, the counselor just asked us if we would be willing to just be live counseled. Like he didn't know our story at all, like not that way anyways. I guess in some way he did, because we did the TJTA, so he would have known somewhat. And I was scared even at that point, but I'm like, Tina says, we got nothing to lose. So you know what, we did that, and he began to just counsel us, and this was for the training purposes.
Yeah.
And so finally I just, the way I felt, I can't explain, but I never felt the weight lifted, because I finally felt that, oh, this is normal. Like you can you can hurt, but there's a way that you can actually get healing from that. And so just the way he did that, I was like, wow, I could see something. I had some light.
There was things that you just needed to get off your chest.
Yeah, there were, and I didn't know that. All I felt I did was complain, because when I was at home, all I did is talk about how I was feeling, talk about what I felt like was wrong, or what they did, or what I got received, what how I got treated, or whatever that is, right? And I began to be in a cycle, and that just dragged everybody down. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. But this was different. This wasn't like that. This was I was able to share my heart, to share, okay, so this is real, what I was feeling. So now we can look at what was real and not deny it. So it wasn't denied, but now we can bring healing, or we can go and bring this to a place where I could understand what was going on. And then it's not about others, it's about me. It's about what the Lord wanted to do in our life. So I could completely just, and then that's where you start feeling, what, I wasn't right. Like the way I respond, like there's always ways that we respond to things, right?
Yeah.
When you're hurt, all you want to do is blame. Like that's the natural. I think that's the natural way of us just wanting to do that, because that's what they did, and that's what happened here, and it wasn't fair. But all of a sudden, you see your side, and I'm like, oh, if I deal with that, it seemed like all of that other stuff just fell off.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Because what I was trying to do is control what others did, and that gets even worse.
Interesting.
And that's what happens most of the time with people, even in a relationship.
They let other people control what they do.
Let them control.
They want to control other people a lot of times.
And we don't know that.
Yeah.
But by us trying to control what they do, it makes it very hard for us, because that's not designed. We can't do that.
Yeah.
We just can't.
I heard it. It was a secular guy. He said a while back that bitterness or unforgiveness is like taking poison, hoping the other person will die.
Yeah.
You're spending all your time focused on something, and you can't believe it, and I'm going to make them feel a certain way. And meanwhile, they're just living right on. They're doing their life, not even really thinking about you a whole lot.
Not at all.
You're just obsessing and obsessing and obsessing, right?
I think that would be very accurate.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. That's what we do, because we struggle. If we hold on to unforgiveness, we struggle more than that person that, like, let's even say that person was wrong.
Right.
But by you holding on to that, you're hurting yourself more than what that person is hurting.
Yeah. They might not ever feel the guilt that you want them to. They don't. They're not. Their conscience isn't as clear as yours, maybe. Whatever, and they just don't feel it.
But you know what's amazing? You hear this saying all the time that if I just let that go, then then they're off the hook. Then I'm leaving. Then they feel like they're going to be off the hook, and then they're not going to be responsible, even if they're wrong. But what's amazing, when you release them, you're taking them off your hook, because they are on your hook. If you imagine that heavy weight that you're carrying, they're on your hook. But not letting them go, God is not able to deal with them, because He wants to work in their life, but you're actually not letting them. And I have seen this. By doing that, you're not letting God deal with that person.
So once you let go of that person, then God can often start to do His work.
So by let's say if it was horribly wrong, obviously, what this person did, but letting them off the hook is not letting them off the hook completely. You're letting them off your hook. You're putting them on God's hook.
Vengeance is mine, I will repay.
So vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So it's not our job. Yeah. And by trying to do it, God's not going to stop us. He's going to say, I'm going to let you try, but you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so by giving them, putting them on God's hook, all of a sudden we've seen this happen where this person is completely released, but now that person is being dealt with, and it had nothing to do. This person didn't do that. Yeah. It's God's doing, and He does that, and we've seen that happen.
That's good.
So,
yeah, there's a bit of a tricky spot there, right? Let's say someone has done you seriously wrong.
Yeah.
And they don't deserve forgiveness. Yeah. And to give them forgiveness without them actually repenting, without them actually, like Jesus says, if a man comes to you and repent, he offends you, and then he comes to you and says, I repent. Yeah. He says, forgive him up to 7 times, or 70 times 7 at one point, he says, right? Mm-hmm. But what if that person doesn't come and say, I repent? Mm-hmm. What do I do with it then? Well, I'm not going to forgive until he repents, which I can understand to a degree. But if you are holding on to that idea, saying, I'm never going to repent, I'm not going to forgive until they see their error, then you're still carrying that weight. You're not releasing them from the issue. And you don't have to forgive them in the sense that now they're okay with God.
No.
God can still deal with them.
Yeah.
But in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul says that we ought to forgive one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. And so I think about my sin, I believe, are all forgiven, past, present, future. When Christ died for my sins, He died for all of them.
He did.
And so if you offend me deeply and you've done some sin against me, is God forgiven you already? Well, I believe so.
Yeah.
So who am I to now hold on to your sin, hang it over you, when God has actually already released you from it, right? Like there still needs to be dealt with. The person needs to probably own up to something and figure it out. But it's not up to me, right? I can release that.
Absolutely.
And let them go.
That's the beauty of it, and that's where we can be completely relieved of it, because if it's something that you've been waiting for, like let's say something from many years ago, maybe even from your own family or whatever it is, and you've been waiting for that person to come and to apologize, and that might never come.
Yeah.
But all these years that you've been waiting, you have held yourself in bondage. And it's just like a trap, and where Jesus says, "I have come to set the captives free."
Yeah.
But we are responsible for that part that we're holding on. Even if it's been against me, I'm responsible to let them go.
Yeah.
And so, in James, I love that passage there. That to confess your trespass to one to another, and pray for one another that you may be healed. So it's interesting that when a person opens up and just allows themselves to, okay, so I'm hurt. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you're starting to complain, but you're being honest.
Yeah.
You need to be honest with where you're at and to open up. And then when a person does that, and to feel completely, open with it, there's something about that God has promised a healing when a person confesses, and it's not anybody that can forgive your sin except for Christ Himself, God alone. But it's something about that He is asking us to confess to one another. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing.
That passage in James, I think, has been confusing for some people, because it sounds almost like you get forgiveness by confessing to one another.
Exactly.
But the forgiveness is in regards to the sickness that's on the person. So many people in our culture, I believe, are sick because of their health mental health, or because they're, let's say it rather, because of sin in their lives.
Exactly.
So if they're holding on to anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, or they're just stressing out, it's revealing itself in a physical sickness.
Yeah.
So if you can go to that person and say, look, this is where I've gone wrong, you confess your fault to another person, then you pray for one another, very often the sickness can be healed then, because you've released that inner tension that's causing the physical condition, right?
Yeah, and that's many times where that happens, where a person feels physically sick, but it's all about what's going on the inside.
It's not that they're unforgiven going to hell necessarily, but it's unforgiven in the sense that God's going to deal with this. You're going to have this physical condition until you recognize it. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and that doesn't automatically mean, okay, so now you're doomed to hell. But he's given us a formula to follow, and it's more or less obedience, right? Obedient to him. It's being faithful and obedient. If he calls us to do that, to have someone and to walk alongside us and to say, hey, I'm willing to share my mess with you, and I'm not proud of it. That's usually the thing. I'm not proud of talking about certain things, right? But if that's what God is calling you to do, and he says, you know what, the fervent effective prayer reveals, or how's it go again with the prayer anyways at the end, that it's effective.
Yes.
And so it's talking in that passage about sickness as well, but like you said, it's not always the physical sickness that we're that
whole depression idea, and
so
the
it can also be that hopelessness, that depression, and there's a lot of those things that that you can actually be completely healed from. And so there's hope. There's hope for all that.
Right on. Well, I think we've probably gone on long enough. Maybe one day we'll have to sit down and actually get your backstory. And you did share your testimony with me last week, and so it's a pretty neat story that you came to faith through a Rhineland minister, right? Which was really neat. And then you had your brother pass away, and it was pretty difficult to deal with. But we'll have to get to that some other time.
Sounds like a plan.
Right on. Appreciate it, Henry.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.